Dennis Young here, Primitive Substance YouTube channel. Another very special guest, Colin Bass from the famous band Camel. If any of you prog fans out there, you know Camel, and plus all the other music you've done. So, Colin, I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
So, let's go maybe back to some of your early days, how you got interested in playing bass and some of your early influences.
Early influences.
And
I think I've always just listened to music. Music was always my escape, And so when I was growing up, which was a long time ago, I was listening to a whole cross section of things. My introduction to music on records was, because there was no radio around in that time,
right.
the media landscape, the people who don't know what life in Britain was like in the 50s when I was growing up, then, you wouldn't believe it. But the music came in through records. And it just so happened that one day my father brought home a secondhand, auto change record player.
Oh, I remember those.
He got with it, he bought it from a family down the road, and with it came a big pile of records. And so I played them, and it was a real mixed bag. It was Slim Whitman, it was Mendelssohn, Fingal's Cave. It was so like classical stuff, like opera stuff, and also some country music and things like that. And to me, it was just like a magic machine because, and I didn't care what music came out of it. It was like,
you absorbed it all.
I think I gravitated to the good stuff, but Slim Whitman was a great singer. But, it was the smell of the thing and putting the records on, and it had a good bass end, very important. And I used to just play it loud, and it was great. And then my older brother would start to bring home records, and like was like Elvis Presley, Heartbreak Hotel, Lonnie Donegan, big name, big influence in British music.
Oh, yeah, I know. I've read that.
Lonnie Donegan and the skiffle stuff, and of course the skiffle stuff came in, and my brother got hold of a cheap acoustic guitar. And so we had that, and then I started plonking around on it, and so he built a T-chest bass, with a broom handle and a T-chest and a piece of string, and that's what everybody was doing in the skiffle age. And so we used to just try to make a noise on that, but I didn't know how to play a guitar or didn't know any chords or anything, and. But I don't know. It just sort of like went on from there. But it was always music, And I went through a period, sort of when I was between 8 and 14 or something, when there was when I, it was a really hard time in my home, my family, and I wanted to get away, and I was escaping through music. And so that's what I was doing. I was just listening, and then the Beatles were there and the Stones, and then I was at school. I was at secondary school, my grammar school, and I just didn't pay any attention at school. I wasn't interested, but I was latching on to people who had records, and we were listening to, I remember buying the first Bob Dylan album, and, my friend and I had a little Bob Dylan Appreciation Society, and we would just play that thing over and over and over again and fantasize about what it all meant.
Right.
And then at that time you had that incredible energy, like mid 60s, 64, 65.
Oh, yeah. What a era.
With the Beatles, the Yardbirds. And then I sort of really caught onto that British blues scene. And I used to just listen to the Five Live Yardbirds album over and over again. And then I was in a band at school, and we were trying to make our way through Chuck Berry numbers and stuff like that.
And I start right.
I was playing maracas and harmonica.
Oh, okay.
And being the singer. And because in those days, because of Mick Jagger, you had to have the maracas. So
that's funny.
Otherwise it wasn't real. So and that was the start of it, really. And then I sort of left school really early, 15, and I went into I got a job, and all I was doing was sort of like saving up for a guitar.
Oh, okay.
A proper guitar, an electric guitar. I didn't have any help from my family or anything. So, and at the same time, suddenly you bought the Melody Maker newspaper.
Right.
And for my generation and before, really, a really important music newspaper, a weekly. Course. And actually I recommend anybody interested in that period. There's a Facebook group called, or page, site called Melody Maker.
Oh, okay.
Something. And you can go to their site, and they've uploaded like loads of Melody Makers.
Wow.
In PDF form. Huh. And you can go in and see
all the ads in the back too
in 1960s, and the ads in the back.
Oh, that's the key.
Yeah, not only just who was playing at all the hundreds of little clubs around the town.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That doesn't exist anymore. But there were places to play if you could just get yourself together.
Yeah, and you were in this band. Didn't you play in the band The Foundations?
Yeah, and that was another band that I got into because of the Melody Maker adverts.
Okay.
And that's what you did. It was like going to I don't know what you have in the States, going to a job center and looking for what jobs are available if you're looking for a job,
Right.
So you're looking for a job, you buy the Melody Maker and read the classified ads, musicians wanted, and it's just I was in a couple of bands through that.
Now,
and I even auditioned for people like Atomic Rooster and things like that, just through them advertising in the Melody Maker.
Wow. Now, what drew you to the bass? How did you become a bass player?
So
that's...
I started out as a guitarist in my first band called The Crisis.
Okay.
But then I saw that this band Velvet Opera was looking for a bass player.
Okay.
And so I thought I'd have a go, So I quickly got an old Futurama bass. And I got the job. I don't know why, but I don't know. I think at home when I was in my bedroom, sort of listening to Jimi Hendrix, I thought, wow, how does he do that? And then I thought, I can't do that, but I can do what Noel Redding's doing. So I used to play along on the bass strings.
Okay.
So actually, when I picked up a bass,
wow,
I sort of had a feel for it, and then I really loved it because it's that thing of the bass. You've got that power underneath you.
You do, right?
And you can put it in, you can take it out, and affect the dynamics. And this is what's always interested me.
And then you had playing bass with a really good drummer really connects a band so well. You've got the basis of the rhythm, and everything else could build around it.
That's always it. Looking for a really good rhythm section,
Right.
So
I was curious. How did you get in the Steve Hillage Band? That's he's an amazing guitarist.
Yeah, he's an amazing guitarist, and all that. It's like, it's like a lot of my life. I think, Dennis, is that it's been Zufall, German word, serendipity, accident. And so I was in a band in the 70s called Clancy, who were a pub rock band.
Right.
and pub rock was really happening in London in the UK, because all of a sudden all these venues were opening up. In pubs there were opportunities to play, and this whole thing grew up. And because the record companies thought it might be something going on there, you used to get some nights there would be a couple of A&R guys sort of coming around checking you out.
Okay.
And we signed with Island Records, but then we sort of like produced by Muff Wingwood, and somehow we didn't quite see the eye to eye with him. I don't know why. He's a really nice guy. But band politics, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so they dropped us, and we signed with Warner Brothers and did 2 albums for Warner Brothers.
Oh.
And so that was all through the 70s.
Right.
And so funnily enough, I've just
are those records still available? I mean, are they reissued?
Yes, they are available on CD, unfortunately. Actually, the first one is pretty good, I think, but it was there's some good tracks on it. And funnily enough, I just got a delivery of a box set of pub rock stuff from Cherry Red Records, and they asked me if they could use one track from Clancy on it.
Oh, that's good.
So there's a nice track, "Steal Away," one of Ernie Graham's songs, the late Ernie Graham, who was a really interesting character.
I imagine. So you're already doing prog music when you hooked up with Steve, right?
Not really.
No?
Because I was still sort of at Clancy. We were still into that sort of rock and West Coast stuff, and what was I listening to? I don't know. But then it was Steve Hillage's manager, because Steve had just recorded the L album, produced by Todd Rundgren in the States.
Okay.
And it was, apparently, a sort of all of a sudden it was in the LP charts in Britain.
Oh.
And that was a kind of a surprise to them. So they were sort of like, he was getting a band together quick to go out on tour.
Right.
And the Steve Hillage's manager knew that the Clancy had just broken up, and he quite liked the band. So he said, you want to try out with Steve, and go round to his place in Kensington, take your guitar.
Right.
And so I just went round there and met Steve, and we sat down and jammed for about an hour or so. And he said, "Okay, good. You start next week. Clive Bunker's playing drums." And
I know him. Yeah.
I thought, wow. Yeah, I mean, I was listening to. I was trying to think. In the late '60s, I really liked Jethro Tull and Yes, the early Yes. I used to love. I used to go and see them. They had a residency at the Marquee Club.
Oh, okay.
And so I used to go and see them fairly often. I think it was on a Wednesday.
Oh, wish I saw that. That must have been something.
That was the original lineup,
with Peter Banks in the band then?
Peter Banks.
Yeah. Oh, he was great.
John Kay, Bill Bruford, Chris Squire, and John Anderson.
Oh, that must have been something.
Yeah. And one thing I remember from that, it was there one week, and John Anderson said, "Oh, did you see the moon landing on the television?" Because that was then.
Oh,
unbelievable.
Right.
But that was then, and I looked it up in the old. I found an old advert for the Marquee.
Yeah.
In that time, that month, in that year, and like Yes were playing every Wednesday, and the moon landing was on the Monday or something like that.
Wow.
And so they'd just been showing a bit of it on the TV. And
that's something.
So that's all I remember. I remember him sort of saying, "Oh, wasn't that wonderful?" And sorry for my John imitation.
That's all right.
I love him, really. But Yeah, but I used to think that was okay, that's the kind of music I'd like to get into. It was really interesting, and Chris Squire was,
Oh yeah, on
of
bass,
course,
it's incredible.
yeah, and it was kind of totally original, and
Right.
but lovely harmonies. I just love those harmonies. They used to
That
really,
was that was really great about Yes, because Chris Squire could really sing too.
yeah,
He had a
yeah,
great
yeah, yeah,
voice.
yeah, beautiful. So that was before I started playing. I was trying to go and see these bands as often as I could afford it, and yeah, so going to the Marquee and places like that. But yeah, but then there's Steve Hillage was talking about. Yeah, so I did join Steve Hillage for about I don't know, it wasn't less than a year, but it was kind of like a lot of work all of a sudden.
Did you
And we
tour a lot? Did you play a lot of
yeah, we
shows?
toured in Europe and we toured in the States. We were
Okay.
supporting the Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh, they
On,
were wow, that's a great
it was
band.
just as they were breaking into arenas or something like that.
Oh wow. I didn't know
It's the
that.
new world record album,
Right.
and so I don't know. They got him a support act on that. So we travelled from west to east, and yeah, played Madison Square Gardens
Oh wow, that's something.
and the Cow Palace and the big arenas. And that was my first time in the States. That was
That is quite an awakening to the stage playing Madison Square Garden. Wow. I mean,
terrible.
that's the
Yeah.
epiphany. If you can play Madison Square Garden or something like that, then that's exciting in itself. You know?
Yeah, well, it certainly is as a venue, itself. Yeah, it is amazing, and just the first time of being on a stage that big in front of an audience that big,
Right, right.
But at Madison Square and those sort of things, when you're doing a support spot,
Yeah, that's
there's
tough.
about 18,000. I don't know how much that holds, 18,000 people or something, and the gig is well sold, and so you're getting a lot of people coming in, but
Oh, I know it.
when you play, there's still people coming in getting
Oh,
their
you
beers and
know,
they're throwing frisbees
I can say to that because our last gig as a band, we were opening act at Madison Square Garden. And
okay,
I can relate to that same exact thing we went through. We got asked to play with this
yeah,
big band, and then had to play exactly at 8 o'clock, and
yeah,
people were still coming in. These
oh
union
yeah,
guys were
yeah, of
pains in the
course,
ass. Get off the stage, guys. You
yeah,
got 15 minutes. That's it.
absolutely. Well,
Oh,
we
that's
had
funny.
45 minutes. And somebody's just released a live CD. They sent me a copy of
Okay.
the Madison Square Gardens gig, and you can hear that we're steamrolling through that set at high energy
Imagine.
tempo,
I
high
can imagine
tempo,
that.
just
Yeah,
to get it all in, and just because of the excitement of the situation. But that was a great band because I
yeah.
learned a lot
Huh.
from Steve. He's a really focused character,
I'm
and
sure he is. And
you
was he
know
playing that glissando guitar there with the
Yeah, Christian Boulay, the late Christian Boulay, he was playing the glissando. That
oh,
was his job. That he was just playing glissando all night.
oh wow. And did you have a
Yeah, yeah.
good keyboard player too with a lot of
Well, they had Miquette, Steve's partner,
oh
and
right.
Basil Brooks, the synth guy, and they were playing these little sequences, and I think Miquette had a small keyboard, but it was all in its infancy then, all that
Yeah.
stuff. So these
So
little plastic briefcase sequences, I forget what they were called now, but that
boy,
was
that's
great.
something. That's
Yeah,
quite an introduction into the world of rock and roll and music and big time music. So
and
then
and
but
playing
then
with somebody like Clive Bunker, that was that
oh,
that
he's a
was
great drummer.
that was upping the game somewhat. I mean, yeah, he was a fantastic drummer.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I gotta now. There's probably YouTube videos of some of those shows, right? I gotta
there is,
look
yeah,
for those.
yeah. Steve
Everybody
Hillage
out there
Band.
should. And then
Yeah,
is this how you got into Camel? Was through
yeah.
Steve?
That's what I
Wow.
mean. It's just these kind of connections, and it's sort of. I was I was in some other bands in London and playing some various stuff, nothing important. Well, actually, it was important to me, but
Okay.
nothing that really took off in the end. But and it was, and Camel were looking for a bass player. Richard Sinclair had left, and it was Laurie Small was their tour manager,
Right.
and he had been tour manager for some of the Steve Hillage gigs in Europe.
Okay.
And so they were looking for a bass player. I don't know how many they tried, but and Laurie rang me up and said, hey, you want to go and try out for Camel?
Right.
So, okay, and I got on a train up to Norfolk where they were on a farm, sort of in a big rehearsing in a barn somewhere.
Right.
And that was, and I didn't know anything about them. I
Oh,
didn't
well,
know
that's something.
anything about them. With Clancy, we had supported them at the Roundhouse in London, sort of a couple of years in the 70s. And, but I don't know, we had to go somewhere else. And I just remember hearing them as we were walking out, and so I didn't really know a lot about them. And when I was asked, I just got an album from the secondhand record shop down
Oh, okay.
which was funnily enough, it was Breathless.
Okay. I've heard that one.
And I was playing that and thinking, oh, I really like this because this is so melodic and
Yeah.
so it's British and it's very melodic and the playing is wonderful, so, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, I could do that. I later found out that the Breathless is, of course, is not Andy's favorite album
Oh,
by,
really?
by a
Ah.
long chalk. I think related to the band politics that was going on around. That was the end of his relationship with Peter, and
Mm.
so things going on. And I think that Andy was getting a bit unhappy with that situation,
So
and
you
unhappy
did. So you
with
did two.
Sinclair.
So you had Kit Watkins in the band,
Yeah, it was
Andy
Kit
Ward,
Watkins, Jan
great drummer.
Shellhouse, Andy
Andy,
Ward.
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, Andy
Andy
Ward. What a
Latham.
great drummer. He
Yeah,
was a
great
really
drummer.
good. Yeah.
And we sort of hit it off. Really, I just went. They just played me this. What was the first, sort of like the beginnings of Him to Her, song on "I Can See Your House from Here."
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I just sort of made sure I learnt it as I heard it.
Yeah.
They allowed me a couple of times through to get the hang of it, and I don't know. I think Andy liked it, and Andy Ward liked it, and so yeah, they said, okay, we'll let you know, and then they did let me know. So, and I went
Oh.
back and started rehearsing for what would become the "I Can See Your House from Here" sessions.
Oh,
So,
okay. And now you've been with the band since what, 1979 or
well,
78
that's
when you started?
79. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
there are sort of, I did sort of drop out. I mean, it's a really checkered history. It's a really
Hmm.
it's a story of needs writing about someday. But it was like I did those two albums, "I Can See Your House from Here" and a
Right.
new album, and we were just working all the time. We were just
Hmm.
rehearsing, making a record, going out on tour.
Oh, yeah.
And then
That's
when
a,
that was over, you had a bit, a month off or something, then rehearsing, making a record, going out on tour. And yeah, so, and that's what happened. And towards the end of the second tour, the new tour, then it was, Andy Ward was having some problems.
hmm.
So yeah, and that which was a bit tragic in its way,
Yeah, that's too bad.
and sort of mental health problems,
Oh,
and so he obviously needed a rest, and I think it really sort of completely shattered Andy, you know, and he went off on his own. And at the end of that tour, I sort of got off our last gigs were in France, I think, and I got off the bus in Paris and took my basses and my suitcase, and I stayed in Paris for about 6 months.
Wow.
And nothing was, you know, and I managed to get some work. I had some friends there, and so I managed to get some work there on a couple of albums. And yeah, so, but, you know, that was obviously, the band kind of dissolved. But, you know, Andy had to make another record for the contract. And so he did the Single Factor thing with Davey Payton and all the Abbey Road session players.
Okay.
And then they did a tour, so I wasn't on that one. And but, you know, I think that was good. It was good for him to make a complete change, play with these people, just total professionals, and you know, they went out on tour and had a lot of fun. I went to see them in Hammersmith, actually. That was it was really nice. And yeah, and then he did an album, Stationary Traveller, with some of the same people, but and using Ton Scherpenzeel.
Okay.
From Kayak, a Dutch player. And then 76 or 75 maybe, you know, Andy sort of just rang me up out of the blue and said, "Hey, you want to go on tour?" So I don't know, maybe Davey Payton couldn't do it, but or didn't want to do it, or maybe
there you go.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, it was great, and we did that tour, and yeah, I enjoyed that tour. It was good, but there were too many people on the stage. You know, it was.
Yeah, that makes it tough.
Yeah,
too much sound.
Yeah. Well, too many personalities and basically you've got no room except just to play the part to fit. It's like being in an orchestra, you know.
I've had that. Yeah, you don't hear yourself anymore. You're trying, and then you try to play louder to be heard. So it makes a tough situation. I've been through that.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's just the fact that, and that's when I sort of realized that actually what I really like doing is like being in a more stripped down sound where you've got space and, you know, space, you know, because it's like, do you want to recreate all the sounds that overdubs that you've put on the record, you know, or do you want to try and make a live thing as a different thing from the record, you know, play the same arrangements, but, you know, it's going to sound more, it's going to have more space if you've got less instruments.
Right.
And also when it's the classic 4-piece, you know, keyboards, bass, guitar, drums.
Right.
I love this because everybody's got their own little corner, and you can work like that. I guess I'm old fashioned.
Now, what about this Mustaphas 3? What about that group when you did those records? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because it wasn't when Andy came back and asked me to do the Stationary Traveller tour. That was in '85. Right. And at that time, I was also working with the Three Mustaphas 3. And that was, I mean, you know, that was such a strange band. Yeah. And that was also another real education for me, because these people, there was like really good musicians in it. There, for instance, is Lou Edmonds, who now plays with Public Image Limited. You know,
okay,
has been for decades. But he was Uncle Petrell in the original Mustaphas, because we all adopted.
Oh, okay.
We all adopted these
personalities. Okay.
You couldn't do that these days, not politically correct, but you know, we were posing as sort of a family from some strange East European country that nobody can quite find on the map. But you know, we have our strange ways, but actually we're quite smart, you know, and we'd sort of we'd learned to play at the local truck stop in our strange country.
That's lovely.
This was the story. And you had truckers coming from all over the world. And so we had to learn music from all over the world to,
okay.
And that's what we did. We, everybody was in the band was very skilled musician, but also had their own specialities, like whether it was, the West African music, whether it was salsa, or whether it was a lot of Balkan stuff, Greek music. And so learning a lot of Greek music for a start. I mean, is fascinating because you got all those interesting time signatures.
I'm sure with that.
It's very proggy.
That probably you learned so much from something like that.
Yeah,
that must have been really quite an experience.
Well, funnily enough, we had a kind of humorous angle. And although it was kind of like deadpan humor, it wasn't slapstick. We didn't do slapstick. It was just sort of, we were strangers everywhere we went. So we could talk to people and say, what strange customs you have in your United States of America, and all this. And we did a lot of touring around Europe, especially Germany and France. And we went to Japan, and we did about five tours of the States.
Wow! Did you play
like sort of small clubs, and then getting into colleges and things like that, and in ballrooms and God, I can't remember the venues now.
That's really something. Now, were you a headlining act, or were you playing with?
Okay. Yeah. So there was a kind of a reputation around it on some sort of, it's sort of like an indie thing,
right.
I guess, but and people would come. The music was really good. It was really, you would never have heard half of this stuff before.
Oh.
But we played it with a kind of energy, but also it was funny. So people would come to laugh, to be amused, and to really dig the music. And
that's the main thing. That must have been something. Now, is a record still available? Music still available?
Yeah, there's about five albums. Yeah, there's about five albums on Globestyle Records, the UK label. And if you a quick intro into the strange world of Mustapha, we did a sort of like a 10-minute thing for an English arts program on one of the television channels, and they just commissioned us to do this thing, and we went to their studio and we made it up as we went along. We did a couple of miming to a couple of our tracks,
right,
in a strange way. And but we had we did our own little talk show. We did sort of excerpts from a soap opera.
Oh, that must be neat. I got it.
And the news and the weather and all this stuff, which gives you an idea of the ethos of Mustapha. And that's on YouTube. It's called.
It's okay.
It's called the Balkan TV. Look for 3 Mustaphas, 3 Balkan TV or something.
Okay. I'll look that up after this for sure. I got to see that.
It's you've never seen anything like it, Dennis.
Now, what about? It sounds a little bit like Vivian Stanshall. When he did all those
Vivian
characters.
Stanshall.
He did all those early days anyway. The 60s. So it sounds a little like that. Creating
we weren't so focused on the comedy. That was incidental.
Okay.
But it's that same old British humor, and I think that's it. You can't do that anymore.
No, unfortunately. Now let's talk about Indonesia. Now this is really fascinating.
That's interesting.
You went to Indonesia and you did 3 solo records, and then you have this one song that's Denpasar Moon. That's
Denpasar Moon.
That's covered by like 50 artists. That's quite a story. Let's hear some of that.
More than that is still being covered. It's still being covered. It's an evergreen in Indonesia, and really, again, this is all just total accident. Just total reacting to a situation and an opportunity. And then all of a sudden, you've got a hit record. It's like my song is famous in Indonesia. I'm not, but
That's something.
But it was when the Mustaphas kind of finished, and I was out on tour again with Camel.
Okay.
And what was the order of the events? Oh, basically just before. So this was kind of like the beginning of the 90s. Yeah, beginning of the 90s. I think. Anyway, it's not. The dates are not important, but
right.
I went to. I was going to Indonesia quite a lot from about mid-80s every year, and my wife and I would go on holiday to Bali.
Oh, God, that's beautiful.
And that was the kind of key, because in Bali, in some of the tourist cafes and the clubs, or no, not clubs, but in the cafes, the little places you sit for a mellow kind of places, they were playing this music, which I later found out was from Java. I thought it was Balinese music at first, but Balinese gamelan is sort of like
right.
energetic and strident for the most part.
Oh, interesting.
And West Javanese gamelan music, as I found out, is much more sedate and a kind of melancholy. They have this kind of melancholy in West Java. That's melancholy always appeals to me. I'm a melancholy soul, I think, and I just really love this music. And then, so just by chance, my wife was a journalist, and she got commissioned to write a book about traveling through the archipelago, Indonesia.
Okay.
So off we went, starting in Sumatra and going through to Java and Sulawesi, and going to as many islands as we could in a few months. And my friend Ben, who was in the Mustaphas, was also running the Globe Style record label. And our friends in Berlin from Piranha Records, and I was living in Berlin at the time, they both asked me to try to get some music to license, because this was like still when world music, the labels were still putting out lots of stuff to see how that goes.
Right.
And and there wasn't a lot of Indonesian stuff. There was the great record on Nunsuch, the Ija Hajija, famous West Javanese, Sundanese singer, which I had. And but there wasn't a lot of Indonesia except for gamelan stuff. But I was really interested in the more popular music.
Got it.
And so when I was in Java, I sort of went to Jakarta and started going to the cassette shop, because everything was cassettes.
Right. Okay.
And, you could go into these, I loved it. You could go into these cassette shops, and they always had rows of cassette players. And all locals are in there with their headphones on,
right,
getting a stack of cassettes and testing them out, and and that's what you could do. You could just get loads of cassettes off the shelf and sit there and listen to all this stuff and try and get an overview of it,
right,
and do some quality control if you could, and because it all sounded exotic at first, but then you start to learn the language of it. And what always comes through, I think, in any music is that you got quality of performance, and then all of a sudden you hear somebody who go, "Oh, wow, now that's a good singer," this is
come across
and so you gravitate towards that and listen to their other work and things like that. And so that was a kind of a learning about West Javanese music, which the stuff that I've been hearing in Bali before. And you look at the cassette. That record company, look them up in the phone book. I phoned them up, go and he said, yeah, sure. Come. I'm interested in licensing some titles. Oh yeah, come. Yeah, of
Oh
course.
yeah, for sure. That's great. Yeah.
had
So
some
you
had
got,
some money in my pocket. So
yeah, of course.
I was
That's
very popular. And yeah, so that was it. And it was just the one guy I went to in Jakarta, and I licensed a band from him, an album from him by a band called Nasidaria from
right.
Semarang, sort of all young female, kind of, it's all very Islamic, all very sort of, but pop music. And they played guitars, electric guitars and
Okay.
stuff. And although they were covered in from head to foot, they were incredibly sexy. I mean, it was just
Something.
amazing. So eventually we got them over to Berlin, so to perform at the House of World Cultures. But yeah, so anyway, that was so I was at this guy, the guy with the record company, Chinese Indonesian. That's the people who ran the record the industry. And and he said, oh, we got chatting and we agreed I would license that. And he says, oh, you're a musician too? And I said, yeah. He said, oh, well, you must use my studio.
Oh.
And I just thought, oh, wow, okay, that's an opportunity. So I said,
right.
Could you organize some musicians for me? And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just sort of thought, okay, get me a flute player, get me a kendang player. Sounds like tabla, but it looks like a pair of bongos. And this is a real art of playing percussion. And it's the ground sound of dangdut music, which was like the street music at the time. Not a lot of people know that, Dennis. It's all right.
Now a lot, maybe a few more know it now, I hope. That is something. So
and so he organized a session for me with some musicians, and he got me a keyboard player in who could help arrange and liaise between the guys. And he said, okay, you can go into the studio, Monday or whatever it was. And I thought, okay, well, I better have a song so I went to the hotel and I wrote what was basically Denpasar Moon.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's something.
It really, and it came from the gods. I believe it. It came from the gods. It didn't, it's like one of those things.
It went right through you, right?
Indeed, you received it. Because of the opportunity, because of the situation, all of a sudden you find it in you to do this. Now, why you couldn't sit down and do that normally. This is magic, that's the magic of it.
So I called it. Go ahead.
Sorry.
So the song is still played today, and
I still played today. Yeah.
You can something.
Just put Denpasar Moon in YouTube. There's loads of it, like kids singing it. There were some big hits by famous singers. It was they sort of semi-translated the lyrics, and some people wrote new lyrics for it. But it was basically I was trying to do a mix between dangdut, the street music, and this melancholy sound of West Javanese music that I really liked. And I kind of I didn't know what I was doing, so I just made this hybrid, that without realizing it.
Plus, you had the right musicians too, the right players.
Really good players.
So you had the perfect storm there, right? You had
exactly.
Song, the players, and that's a great story.
So I went in just this story as it's important for me, but so I went in and recorded it, and then I ended up with a demo. I left a copy with my friend, the record company guy, and he had the original tape. It was in his studio, so he put it up he wrote, "Mr. Colin, experiment," and
that's funny.
And put it on the shelf. He didn't know what to do with it, so and I went off on tour with Camel, and I was in Japan. And I'd done some stuff in London for an Okinawan group for a label that the Rinken Band, for a label, Wave Records, that was I knew were doing productions in Indonesia. Right. So I thought, wow, okay, I've got a contact there. Right. So I'll get in touch with him and say, hey, I've got this song. I want to make a whole album in Jakarta.
Right.
I thought, let's go now, And he said, okay, I'll send my guy round. And so it was an afternoon in Tokyo, and the guy came round, Kensuke Shina, very nice, became my friend. And I left the cassette with him, and he was the guy who had been going to Indonesia for that company and had been liaising in Jakarta for various musicians and productions. Huh. And so when I got back from the end of the tour, I got a fax, if you remember faxes.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a fax from the Wave Records, from Kensuke, saying, hey, there's a guy at Sony, and they were a subsidiary of Sony.
Okay.
And there's a guy at Sony thinks your song could be a big hit. Let you get in touch. We'll make your album in Jakarta real soon. So I went, oh, fantastic. That's okay, we're going to have a hit. Fantastic. So, I got in touch and we made the arrangement to go. I would meet him in Jakarta, and we had a budget to pay my friend's studio.
Right.
And and pay for all the musicians.
Wow.
Give them double rates.
Yeah. Wow.
As is expected.
Great. What a story.
And that was, but I didn't, while I was doing that, and which I didn't know, Sony was recording the song Denpasar Moon with a young girl from the Philippines called Mary Beth.
Okay.
And in Tokyo, they were recording it. And they then later used it in an advert, a TV advert on Indonesian TV for Sony Hi-Fis. Sony Hi-Fis, like ghetto blast.
Right.
And it was a camera going through a Balinese temple, sort of like this, and at the end of it is Mary Beth, and you're hearing Denpasar Moon as the camera is going through.
Oh wow!
Her version, and then at the end she stops the ghetto blaster and says, "It's a Sony," So and that just took off. It just really took off in Indonesia.
And you had all the publishing to this, right? The publishing.
Well, I had a publishing deal with Sony, yes.
Okay.
But they didn't really tell me about this, and I never know why. I know why, but because that's the business. But it was only when a friend of mine in Jakarta, a German guy, he rang me up on New Year's Eve, 94, 95. And he said, Happy New Year. By the way, your song is everywhere.
Oh,
and
geez.
I said, what? So, after the holiday there, I sort of phoned up Japan, to Tokyo, and said, hey, my song's a big hit, apparently. You didn't tell me. And they're going, yeah, well, it's hard getting royalties out of Indonesia.
Oh boy!
And it's which was kind of true for a songwriter. You need it's like there was no copyright society,
right?
But because of my song, there was one started being formed. And I later met the guy who was running that, KPR. And it was written about in Billboard as the biggest English language hit in Indonesia ever. And it's just an extraordinary thing,
It is.
But it's true that there was no, for copyright for songwriters, there wasn't anything in place because the whole industry was mostly controlled by the Indonesians. And although Sony had their people in Jakarta, it was the Suharto era, so it was like that you couldn't, a Western company couldn't own more than 49%. So it was still Sema Sakti, that was the Indonesian company. but also it was the industry was still run on the payment scheme. Big stars get big payments, one off. Everything, musicians, one off. Songwriters, one off payment, and somebody's sitting on top of all this.
Right.
And so there was all that brouhaha. And eventually I did get some money out of it because
that's good.
Not through Sonny, but through my friend in Indonesia, because
my gosh,
through that side of the business, because he was then auctioning off the right for, and it's still a one-off payment, so I've still got no, but auctioning off the rights for the cover versions. And this is it's an honor thing amongst the record companies there.
Right.
And so that was, which involved me going over there and hanging around and waiting while there was the people coming and going in walkie-talkies and stuff like that. And eventually a deal was struck. But but anyway, now I've got my rights back from Sonny now.
That's good.
And,
that's great.
And things trickle through.
Yeah, we had fights for our rights too of our songs.
Yeah,
we finally got most of them back. So I know that you sign with a record company and they have your rights, publishing rights, and then they take a lot of the money.
Yeah, but it was complicated by the unusual Indonesian scene.
I can imagine.
And the Sonny people, they had never really broken through into that market to the extent that song took off.
Right.
So, yeah. There was even a soap opera on Indonesian television, ran for 2 series, called Denpasar Moon.
Really? How about that? Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
That's crazy stuff. So I think we're running out of a little bit of time here. I'd like to do part 2 if we can do another. Can we do another interview? We still want to run into talk about your label and
if you really want to, you think people would be interested. I know
they will.
I've been rabbiting on a bit about that, but
that's okay. No, this is important. I think this is something people don't know about. I mean, I looked at it. I said, "What? Indonesia?" I mean, this is so great about this show is that I've learned so much about musicians like yourself with so many other stories of your life that I'm glad I'm able to get it out to people.
I've worked with a number of Indonesian artists since then. I've produced other people there, and in Bandung, in the capital of West Java. I have many friends there. There's a band called Samba Sunda that I produced one of their records, and I still see them if I go over there, and I hope still to do something with them.
So are you doing any more current Camel tours? Are you planning this year more work with Camel?
That's everything is on hold until Andy feels well enough to go.
He's been ill.
Go out.
I didn't know he's been ill.
Oh wow! Yeah, he has.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, Andy has struggled with his health for a while now. We had 10 years off from 2003 to 2013,
right?
Because he had a stem cell transplant and
a
blood sort of cancer disease.
Oh, boy.
And so he was out, and he nearly went. I was really worried about him. He was really, because a stem cell transplant, you have to have a lot of chemo to get rid of your immune system, because they have to find a donor and give you someone else's immune system if it matches.
Right, yeah.
And it's risky. But they said, well, otherwise you've only got a couple of years to live, or something like that. I'm not sure exactly the details, but so he just went, oh, okay. And blimey, as we say, in 2013, I was really surprised. He rang me up and said, okay, want to go on tour next year?
Oh.
So I said, yeah, you bet.
You got a big following in the UK. I don't know as much here in America as, I mean, I've seen some of the shows where there's a lot of people there.
Yeah,
Played
yeah,
some
yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
places.
Well, UK places in Germany, places in, well, not Germany, sort of dropped off a bit, but we managed to start getting back in there. It's funny, but Japan, very good.
Oh yeah, can imagine.
And we all, every time I've been to the States with Camel, it's always been West Coast, East Coast,
Okay.
mostly West Coast, because Andy was, up until 2003, Andy was living in
California.
just in California, just
Okay.
close to Half Moon Bay on the coast there.
Okay.
But yeah, but we haven't been to the States for the last tours, in this last
Okay.
batch of tours. But we had to cancel a tour 2023.
Oh,
It was
okay.
like a big tour lined up. It would have been the biggest yet, I think.
Okay.
And we were going back to Scandinavia for the first time in a
Okay.
long while. A lot of the gigs were sold out in advance.
Oh.
And at the last minute, Andy developed problems in his legs.
Oh.
And he had to be whisked off. We should have been going to Japan, rehearsing and going to Japan. And then we'd already been rehearsing.
Oh,
And it was
sorry to hear
sounding
that.
fantastic, but because this last lineup is just so great with Pete Jones and Denny.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Well,
But he instead of getting on the plane, he was whisked off to have an emergency operation on his back.
oh my gosh. Wow,
Spinal
boy.
stenosis he had. So and now he's still recovering from that.
Okay.
It takes a lot of therapy. It takes
Oh
a lot
yeah.
of
I'm sure it does.
so we'll see. I always hold up. I'm in touch with him a lot, and we're sending stuff, music,
Right.
and I'm really pleased I managed to get him to play on 5 tracks of the last album I did with
Yeah,
Dan
I saw that.
Zero.
Yeah. That's great.
I love this album. It's nice and positive, and
So
it's
yeah,
and he played guitar on 5 tracks, and he played beautifully. And so he's in the studio, and he's practicing every day.
right.
And I guess it's a matter of, I think, to go out on tour is you need an awful lot of stamina.
I'm sure you
You need a
do. Oh
modicum
yeah.
of health,
Can
because
imagine. Yeah.
it's not only flying across the world. It's in Europe. A lot of the times you're in the rock and roll bus,
Oh
and
yeah.
you do a gig, and then you get on the bus and climb into your bunk upstairs, and hey, you can't do that with back problems.
No, not only that, but after a show, there's so much energy. It's
Yeah,
tough
yeah,
to cool. It's tough to like wind down,
yeah, yeah,
after, especially if it's a great show.
yeah.
You're still wind up from the show.
Well,
So
I'll
it
tell you
can't be easy.
something. I'll tell you something to close on, and that is, at least on the last tour, that Andy and I, we were partying and wearing out the younger guys
There you go.
in the lounge of the bus, traveling through the night. We'd be sitting there just having fun, drinking some wine,
That's
talking,
nice.
and
Well,
yeah. So we were doing great,
that's
but
what you got to do, I think, to wind down and enjoy yourselves, right? That's what
yeah.
it's all
Well,
about.
we like each other in the band, so that's always helpful.
So what currently can we find your music at? Where can we find your current records? On Bandcamp?
Yeah, yeah. Actually,
Okay.
Bandcamp, you can get all my stuff on. Well, all my solo stuff you can get on Bandcamp,
Okay.
and that is colinbassbandcamp.com.
Okay. And
Colin Bass
I gotta look up
dot
all this
Bandcamp.
Indonesian music. I can't wait to check that
I,
song out.
okay, well, on if you look on YouTube and Denpasar Moon original version,
That's what I'm gonna look
there's a
for.
video I shot in when my hair was a lot darker, and so were my eyebrows.
Okay.
There was which I shot in '94 or something for the record company there. It's in Jakarta at
Okay.
the sort of a Balinese type temple there, and which is very funny. And yeah, so you can look for Denpasar Moon, Denpasar. Denpasar is the capital city of Bali.
Oh, it is. Okay. Didn't
Yeah,
know
so
that.
that's
Oh.
why. That's
Now,
why.
now, before we go, what can you talk about your instruments a little bit? Do you use a lot of pedals? Do you use, is there,
No,
no?
not
Not a
really.
lot of,
No,
okay.
I usually have a few pedals that I'm toying around with
Right.
when I'm going on tour. I don't use them a lot.
Okay.
Maybe a bit of chorus on the with the fretless, but
Right.
I don't generally get into that because I generally just try to get the sound out of an amp and my fingers,
Yeah. I love a fretless bass.
and a
Nothing
good
like the
instrument.
sound.
Yeah,
Love the
yeah,
sound.
yeah, yeah,
One of my favorite fretless players was Percy Jones.
yeah. Of course,
He had such a distinct sound.
he still has such a distinct
I
sound.
know. Well, I know. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
he's been releasing some great stuff with Pact, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, you should check out his recent stuff. It's very good.
But love your work too with Camel. I mean, it's been great. I've always loved that band. I mean, Andy always played such smooth leads. I mean, they were so clean and everything sounded always good.
Yeah,
You guys
that
always had a great sound. You still do.
yeah. Well, that's Andy. He's just has such his musical ideas are really great.
Well, Andy, if you're watching or if you watch this, I hope you feel better. And
I wonder if he will.
maybe you'll be back tour here in America someday, and I'll be able to see you guys play.
That would be great. Well, I mean, it would be great. It's just a question of
Right.
of health and organizing it.
Yep.
Because one thing that Andy loves doing, like myself, is going out on tour. So
Yeah, that's it.
we just
So,
love playing live.
well, Colin, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you for doing this and spending the time here. And we'll do part two sometimes. We can talk more. You have plenty of stories and more great music, I'm sure, to talk about.
As you wish. Yes. Okay. It would be a pleasure. So,
Colin, and I'll have this up. I'll let you know when I have it up, and I'll put all the links. And I got to start looking up some of your music there.
okay. Thank you.